we can go ahead and get started with Symposium 4 on research. And we really have a great group up here to give a broad perspective on leadership, starting an academic career, but also the different pathways in creating an academic career. And I think in the context of maybe understanding the audience, I'd be interested to know who's early stage, maybe first 5 years of your practice? Okay. Who's beyond five years? Okay. Any med students, residents? Okay. So a nice mix. And I think this is really going to be tailored well to people that are sort of on that point where you're transitioning early into practice and next phases. And so maybe with that, without any further ado.
Our last speaker today will be Dr. Tim Yoon, who is the current president of the International Society for the Study of the Lumbar Spine. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Serena. Wow, that was a great talk, chock full of information. We should have assigned the whole hour to you, I think. My talk is more geared towards the junior people in the crowd, so here we go. These are my conflict of interest. It doesn't really apply to this talk. So when you're trying to build an academic career, what is it? Does it require blood, sweat, and tears? Is that what it takes? Yeah, effort, talent, yes. But that's not all that it takes. It's not just because you try hard that it's going to work. I think you have to think more strategically about this, carefully align your goals with the realities of your situation, right? So I think this is really critical to what you want to do here, to try to balance the academic activities with your clinical activities, you know? And what that means is you want to have a more intentional life, not an accidental life, okay? So try to create some goals with some intentions. So what that means is that when you're looking for a job and dreaming of how you're going to combine your academic pursuits with your clinical enterprise, that you want to begin with the end in mind, okay? So when I started my job, there was this great thing called the Franklin-Covey system. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. It's probably a little passé at this point, but it was a planner, it was a system, it was really great. And I remember the chairman at UC Davis, he apparently made everyone in his faculty go to this thing, and then he figured out he needed to retire before he got too old. He did it. It was pretty awesome. But anyway, part of it is like examining your role as an individual, as a person. You know, who are you? What role do you play as a spouse, a parent, a child, a teacher, a friend, a colleague, and a surgeon? You spend some time, just think about each of the roles you play and what kind of person you want to be in that role, right? Then you start setting your goals in that kind of context. And I sat down before we started my professional career. I sat down at Emory in my new house, empty house, and just spent a lot of time thinking about these things. And, set some career goals after that. And for everyone, everyone's going to have different goals. You know, maybe you want to make a mark. Maybe you want to be the president of CSRS. For me, it turned out ISSLS, the International Society for the Study of the Lumbar Spine, that was, where I wanted to go. Set some personal goals as well. Not just, career goals, but think about what you want to do. Because, life isn't just about work, right? Do you want to climb Mount Everest? Do you want to complete an Ironman, which thank God I eventually did? Do you want to do something related to your faith? I don't know, but you have to dream big when you're setting your goals. And, these goals, they need to be long-lasting, meaningful, and motivating to you individually. And this will become the guiding light for your life. And that's what's going to get you where you need to go. So there's this term called BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal. It was popularized by Jim Collins in his book, Built to Last, a great book that John Heller made us all read. And, it talks about the idea of something really audacious, something difficult to do. When Kennedy said we choose to go to the moon in this decade, it was because it was hard and not because it was easy, right? And so the BHAG is best when it's clear and compelling. It organizes your thoughts and energies, right? It sets priorities for you. Because remember, you think everything is important, right, at some point. This is important, that's important. When everything is important, then nothing is important, right? So think about what your BHAG is. Is it getting an NIH grant? Is it to be a master surgeon? Whatever it is, you have to think about that. And then you have to realize that BHAG is usually an outcome goal, right? You want to achieve something. Maybe it's, to simplify things, I want to run a marathon under 4 hours. Let's say that's your BHAG. Then you need some process goals, right? They need to be very specific, achievable, and they need to be things that are under your control, right? And this is very different from an outcome goal, because if you may have trained well to do your marathon, but on the day, maybe it was really hot, and you just couldn't run 4 hours, Hey, that's okay, as long as you've done all the process goals, right? And the other thing you have to do is you got to have it on a calendar. You have to have it on a deadline. Very specific milestones to reach your BHAG, right? So for the marathon, it would be like, I will hire a coach this week. It's an action with a time component to it, right? I will practice running 3 times a week for 4 weeks. There's got to be some time component to it. It's not a to-do list. It's actually got to be something that is, associated with like an appointment on a calendar and a routine. So I think that's what's important. Now, academics, in generally for promotion, there are 3 major areas, right? Teaching, research, service. What they're looking for is not just that you did all these things, but they're looking for you to be exceptional in at least one of these activities. So that means that you have to figure out what it is that you want to do among these activities, right? And because the clinical practice is always going to pull you in. It's going to pull you in and pull you in and pull you in because you get that dopamine hit by doing some great surgery, becoming a better surgeon, talk to your pals about some surgery. You're constantly getting rewarded for that aspect of your life. So you have to be very careful about this, okay? And, I'm going to try to abbreviate my talk a little bit here, but so I think, the depth of accomplishment is what's really important here, okay? So it's not just like, you spend some time talking to a student, but did you actually make perhaps a curriculum for education? Or in this example, I sat together with one of my residents and developed a duotomy repair model. And, I thought we need something that's cheap, that's easy to do, that we can practice on repeatedly to grow your skills as a surgeon. And so we use a sheepskin model to practice a duotomy repair, Come up with something like that, right? And study it and publish it. Now, not everyone can start off going for an NIH grant, randomized controls trial, or start a basic science lab like I did, right? But there are other things you can do, FDA trials, prospective studies, retrospective studies, and even if you just keep track of what you're doing in some sort of a registry, some sort of format, American Spine Registry, AO Global Data, even like third-party commercial software like Patient IQ, which is really not that expensive, you can keep track of your outcomes and study what you're doing, right? And capitalize on your clinical enterprise to advance your academic experience. So I'll tell you a little bit about my personal experience and how I chose my particular job. My motivation was I wanted to bring modern biology into orthopedics. I had a PhD background. I really believed in science, and I thought we could advance medicine through science. So during my fellowship years, I talked to a lot of people, and I found out that most people told me that having 1 day a week of protected time, quote unquote, turned out to be the time when you did your emergency case, you had your add-on clinic, so on and so forth, and they just ran out of time and did not really have protected time. So I said, I think I'm going to need at least 1.5 days a week where I have a chance of doing research to be successful. And, talking to people, I thought that I needed some sort of funding to get started in my basic science career, starting up a lab. I looked for places that had an animal facility so that I could do my animal research. And so, that really reduced the number of places that I could go get a job, right? But I was willing to go anywhere, which is a big advantage, right? It turns out that the Emory job opened up. It's still where I am right now. And it was, I was convinced that was the right job because a large part from Scott Bowden. We talked about how to do this thing. It was a great conversation. We talked about how to get startup funds, all the different resources that are available, and it was great. And I was convinced that was the place to go. Plus, my parents lived in Georgia, so it was wonderful. So my research BHAG was to cure disc degeneration in 10 years, right? So I tried many, many different things, guys. I injected proteins in there. I used an adenovirus to do gene therapy. I injected cells. I tried electrical stimulation. I learned a lot of cool things along the way, right? That even rabbits have disc degeneration similar to humans. It starts down low, it goes up, it's age-related. We studied adjacent segment disc degeneration by fusing little rabbits together, rabbit spines together, and on. And I've got a couple of ISLS prizes, a Harry Farfan Achievement Award by NAS. But no, I did not cure disc degeneration. So the outcome goal I didn't achieve. But, I feel like it was a great journey, achieving all these process goals. Gosh, I know I'm out of time already, but let me try to continue a little bit here. I mean, you have to think about how much clinical effort you want to put in. And I'm going to give you two role models, Scott Bowden and James Kang, both chairmen of their department, both famous, accomplished people, both, by the way, presidents of ISLS, successful lab, administrator, wonderful family. One of these guys operates 1 day a week. The other guy operates 3 days a week, doing up to 650 cases a year. Very different models, right? But they were both extremely successful, and I think you have to do a lot of self-reflection to figure out what kind of model you want to follow. How are you going to blend the academics with the clinical? I'm going to give you some practical advice, right? Create a routine that's practical for you and your team. You need to have a particular day that you're going to be doing academic work, right? So your brain knows it, your staff knows it, everybody knows, right? And my fellows know that at 7 a.m. in the morning on Friday, I'm on some conference call with my team, my research team, right? And figure out who's going to cover you during your travel. Figure out what your clinical brand is going to be, right? Are you the cervical guy? Are you the deformity guy? Are you the all-rounder? You're going to have to figure this out. And then you grow your practice. I don't know if Howard Ahn is in the audience here, but he told me, you know what? Always say yes, at least for the first 5 years in your life, and he's absolutely right. Just say yes to anything. Give a talk, write a paper, whatever. See a patient. Just say yes. Affability, ability, do good work. Now, I want to say a little bit about surgical mastery. You know what the difference between a master and a beginner is? The master has failed more times than the beginner has ever tried. So give yourself a break. It takes a while to become a master surgeon, right? Some people talk about the 10,000 hours. That translates to 5 to 10 years. And in the beginning, for me, it was really hard, emotionally, mentally, and physically, to do spine surgery well. But don't despair. It gets better with time and repetition. And for those of you speed demons out there, slow down, right? Just because you do a surgery faster doesn't mean that you did it better, right? The speed comes with time, with repetition. And so what you want to do is really just do a good job, not necessarily be fast, okay? And as you try to build your practice, think about creating that rapport with the patient. And I didn't really know about this when I was starting my career, and it took a long time of getting really bad Press-Ganey scores and all this stuff to get a better handle on it. But to me, it boils down to creating a rapport with the patient, building trust, just being curious about the patient or who they are. Where are you from? That's a simple question. A comment about the clothes they're wearing. It's just a great way to get started, and then you can share a little bit about yourself, And at that same time, you ask, who referred you. And that gives you information about where they're from, to understand where your referral sources are, right? And then let's see, I'm running out of time, so let's see. So build your clinical team. They're transient members of your team, but really spend a lot of time on your permanent team, your APP, your nurse, your medical assistant. Appreciate them and tell them you appreciate them. Take them out to lunch, take them out to dinner, you know. In terms of where you get your patients, most of your patients come from your local area. No matter how famous you are, it's almost always the people that in your area. But you'll find that there are pockets of people all over the place. For some reason, I was getting patients from Cocoa Beach. You know, I knew one patient and the word of mouth, and I just kept getting all these retirees from Cocoa Beach, Florida. I mean, they drove all the way up to see me. So you need to understand that, communicate back to your referral sources. And then social media, I don't know too much about social media, you guys, but I will tell you this. Somebody posted a YouTube video of me giving a talk, I think it was at Mount Sinai. And then the patients started coming to me and saying, you know, I saw your YouTube video. And I'm like, I have a YouTube video? And they said, you know, I watched that and I really, you know, connected with you. And they just trusted me a lot more. So I think that YouTube content can be very, very useful. And, you know, all these other social media things. So I'm going to end by saying ISIL's $20,000 per award times 3, you guys. And you could come to some great places like Melbourne, Milan, Italy, or Atlanta, Georgia to pick it up if you wish. All right, thank you.